Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on an absolutely fascinating journey into how global intelligence strategies have fundamentally shifted over the years. If you're sitting there thinking espionage is still just about hidden microfilms, secret gadgets, and dead drops, well, get ready to have your perspective completely flipped. We're going to trace the evolution of modern tradecraft and see exactly how it went from simply stealing military blueprints to hacking the very nature of human perception. So, I want you to think about this for a second. What actually happens when spies stop trying to steal your secrets and start trying to shape your reality? It's a pretty provocative thought, right? But the truth is, modern espionage is increasingly focused not on cracking into hidden vaults, but on the very data, the narratives, and the perceptions that surround us every single day. The battlefield has quite literally moved from the shadows right out into the open. Okay, let's dive right into this with Section 1, the raw materials of secrets. There are basically 10 essential types of primary sources out there. We're talking original documents, interviews, visual records, government statistics, raw data sets, the whole shebang. And what's really interesting here is that whether you're an elite intelligence analyst trying to map out a foreign adversary or just an everyday content creator putting together a deep dive research explainer, you're actually relying on the exact same raw materials. The real power, it lies in taking those raw datasets and building a compelling, actionable narrative out of them. In the world of intelligence, how a state decides to actually use these raw materials pretty much defines its entire strategy. Which brings us to Section 2, Cold War institutional flavors. Back during the Cold War, there was this massive, profound philosophical difference in how global powers weaponized information. It's like they had completely different institutional flavors. The CIA really adopted the role of the technocratic problem solver. They looked at intelligence mostly as a technical challenge that could be beaten with innovation. Think advanced encryption, high-altitude satellite photography, and signals intelligence. But on the flip side, the Soviet KGB had this incredibly psychological and subversive flavor. They cared way less about technical verification and were far more focused on psychological manipulation, ideological subversion, and setting these elaborate cognitive traps for their enemies. When you look at texts like contemporary intelligence warning cases alongside The Determined Spy, you really start to see the real-world impact of these distinct philosophies. Because early Western intelligence relied so heavily on that technocratic problem-solving, it sometimes created a massive blind spot. By viewing espionage as just a series of technical puzzles to solve, they often totally overlooked the messy, unpredictable human factor. And meanwhile, their adversaries were aggressively exploiting that exact human element. A textbook illustration of this Soviet mastery over psychological manipulation is Operation The Trust. Listen to this. Back in the 1920s, Soviet intelligence literally fabricated an entirely fake anti-Bolshevik resistance group. They used this master dangle operation to lure in genuine dissidents and foreign agents. By building this completely controlled alternate reality, they successfully mapped out their adversaries' entire network. It proved really early on that creating illusions is a highly effective, albeit totally devious, intelligence tool. So what happens when things go wrong internally? Let's look at Section 3, Betrayal and Institutional Paranoia. When that messy human factor actually infiltrates your own ranks, it creates what's known in the business as a black hole. When a high-level mole is discovered inside an agency, the real damage isn't just the loss of the secrets themselves, it triggers this massive, self-destructive autoimmune response within the organization. The agency gets hit with systemic paralysis and this intense inward-looking paranoia. Basically, it completely stops hunting its external enemies and instead spends all its energy hunting itself. $1.8 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That was the staggering financial payout Aldrich Ames received from the KGB. Driven purely by mercenary motives, Ames, who was a veteran CIA officer, destroyed virtually every single human intelligence network the agency had inside the USSR. Yes, the financial payout was massive for him, but the institutional cost? Absolutely immeasurable. And what's really fascinating is what happened in the aftermath. Declassified internal documents detail the intense CIA and SBI task force efforts during the mole hunt, and they show how the agencies fell victim to massive confirmation bias and KGB disinformation. They went on these wild ghost chases for literally years. They wasted so much vital time and resources searching for technical bugs or communication vulnerabilities in their Moscow embassy, when all along the actual bug was a human spy sitting right there in Langley. It perfectly highlights how the autoimmune response of a mole hunt can completely derail an entire agency. Moving right along to Section 4, China's whole of society vacuum. As we fast forward into the 21st century, we're seeing a massive paradigm shift away from that old spy versus spy Cold War model. The sources describe China's modern approach as a whole-of-society paradigm. So instead of just relying on highly trained secret agents, it's the systemic, data-driven vacuum cleaner strategy. It involves utilizing wide networks of diaspora, business professionals, and students as potential censors for the state. It includes the economic co-option of global supply chains. The Department of Justice has even issued indictments involving the deployment of secret overseas police stations used to monitor and project influence. It is entirely about harvesting massive data sets from entire ecosystems, which fundamentally redefines how intelligence is gathered today. Which brings us to the climax of our explainer, Section 5, the cognitive warfare era. So how does all this massive data harvesting apply to the modern battlefield? Well, let's map it out. Intelligence targets have evolved drastically over the years. During the Cold War, the focus was all about state military secrets and nuclear capabilities. Then, post-Cold War, that target widened to global supply chains and economic data. But now, in the 2020s and beyond, the targets are elite, non-state ecosystems. The focus has shifted to private firms, research institutions, and transnational networks that are driving major breakthroughs, like the DeepSeek RAR-1 AI model, for example. Power today is just completely diffused. And because of that, the modern objective is no longer simply defeating the enemy in a kinetic, military sense. That's old school. The new goal is reshaping global institutions from within. A competitive advantage today lies in mapping these elite networks, anticipating exactly where leverage and opportunity are going to pop up, and subtly shifting the balance of power before anyone even realizes a conflict has begun. To actually achieve this, intelligence agencies have to practice something called cognitive sensing. This is incredibly important. It's the ability to understand how an adversary's stories and cultural narratives harden into public sentiment long before they ever evolve into mass movements. In this new era of cognitive warfare, information isn't just ammunition you fire at a target anymore. Information is the actual environment being fought over. Let's walk through how modern battle networks actually execute this strategy of deterrence by denial through information-driven shock. Step 1 is to continuously sense that cognitive environment. Step 2 is mapping out those elite non-state ecosystems where the true innovation and influence actually live. And step 3, fusing civilian and military sensors to disrupt, disorient, and completely overload the adversary's decision cycles. The goal is to outcycle them so incredibly fast that their entire battle rhythm just breaks down. I think modern operational art is summarized absolutely perfectly by this quote from the source material. Success is making the adversary hesitate, misallocate resources, and react to illusions until their confidence collapses. It's no longer about kinetic military force. It is entirely about psychological paralysis and achieving narrative dominance. And that leaves us with one deeply profound question to ponder as we wrap up. As the ultimate battle space shifts away from physical territory and directly into human perception itself, can our own institutional trust actually survive the age of cognitive warfare? It really makes you wonder how your own reality and your own sentiments might be subtly shaped by these hidden forces every single day. Keep that in mind the next time you're consuming the raw materials of information out there. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.